Riku is gay. I'm pretty sure that most queer fans of Kingdom Hearts can agree on this thought, that Riku is gay and desperately in love with Sora, his best friend and the protagonist of Kingdom Hearts. Now, this isn't canon, at least not explicitly. Kingdom Hearts 1 was released in 2002, to a world where the average person was far less accepting of queer people. While queer representation did exist at the time, whether through coding or the occasional explicit example, it wasn't anywhere near as normalized for a main character of a video game to be gay back 2 decades ago as it is today. No, this video essay is going to be me discussing plot beats and themes present in Riku's character that can read very plainly as Riku being deeply, truly in love with Sora, and how that love pushes him forward through most of the steps in his journey. To start things off, we can go way back to the beginning of the first game. On the first evening in the opening sequence, Riku throws a Paopu fruit at Sora before giving an explanation about how sharing that fruit with someone means they'll be connected forever, then quickly says he knows Sora has wanted to try it before running off. It's not until the next day that Riku mentions sharing the fruit with Kairi, where he tacks it on as a reward to the winner of a race that was already going to be happening to decide the name of their wrath. It very much reads, to me at least, like Riku giving Sora the Paopu fruit as a way of trying to confess his feelings for his friend, with enough ambiguity to protect himself if such a confession would be taken poorly. Then later in the night, Riku got scared of what actually admitting those feelings could entail, and decided to walk back what he had suggested to Sora, and the race the next day ended up being a convenient opportunity to do just that. He of course also walks back the idea of sharing a Paopu fruit with Kairi after the race is over, because he never had any interest in sharing it with Kairi, or else he would have given it to her when he was thanking her for giving him the inspiration to leave home in the first place. No, he wanted to share this fruit with Sora, and was just too scared to admit it. But even this early in the story, it's clear that Riku's feelings for Sora are significant. We don't see Riku again for quite a while in Kingdom Hearts 1. Sora wakes up alone in Traverse Town, eventually meets Donald and Goofy, and the trio go from one world to the next, closing keyholes and protecting people from the Heartless. All the while, Sora is constantly trying to find leads on where his old friends went. It's not until we find our way back to Traverse Town that the Trinity happens to find Riku, seemingly fighting the Heartless the same way Sora has been. At first, Riku seems thrilled to see Sora, commenting on how long he's been looking for him. Even when he hears Kairi isn't with Sora like he had assumed, his good mood isn't shaken. He seems a little shocked to see Sora with the Keyblade, but it's not until Sora tries to introduce him to Donald and Goofy that his attitude seems to sour. His excited proclamations of freedom are replaced with cautious, even cold questioning, and the second Donald argues the point of Riku joining them, he leaves without even so much as a goodbye. How dare Sora find new friends? How dare he forget about Kairi? How dare he forget about him? Of course, Maleficent stokes the fire of Riku's jealousy and pushes him further into the clutches of the darkness, but she wouldn't be able to extort his fears if they never existed in the first place. Riku is, at least in this point in the story, genuinely hurt by how quickly Sora seems to have found new friends, or as Maleficent puts it, replacements. While she does also dangle the threat of protecting Kairi to manipulate him, it's his attachment to Sora that we see her pull on again and again, until he's so consumed by anger over his perceived abandonment that he's ultimately consumed by Ansem, leading to him being trapped in the realm of darkness at the end of Kingdom Hearts, setting up Sora's adventure to save him in the sequel. Despite spending the entire game in the same place as him, Riku's journey in Chain of Memories is largely separated from Sora's, being one of redemption and reclamation of the self. And maybe I'll cover it in its own video someday, but for now there's not much to say about it. But I will note this. A major plot point in Chain of Memories is that Sora has to go to sleep so that his memories can be put back in their proper state. And while that happens, everyone who is connected to him will forget who he is. And as far as we see, that's true of everyone except for 2 people. The first is Kairi, who remembers that someone used to play on the islands alongside her, Riku, and the others, and even manages to remember Sora's name a few days before he wakes up and everyone's memories are restored. Kairi being able to remember even a shadow of Sora's existence is because of how strong a connection there was between the 2 children's hearts. The second person is Riku, who spends most of the year between Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 fighting Organization 13 and protecting Sora from their schemes, trying to help his restoration however he can. For Riku to have seemingly not forgotten Sora at all, his connection to Sora would have to be immensely powerful. Continuing on from there, Riku spends nearly the entirety of Kingdom Hearts 2 helping Sora, Donald, and Goofy from afar, but running away anytime Sora gets too close to him. And it's not until the end of the game that we see the reason why. It's because he doesn't want Sora to see that he delved too deep into the darkness and looks like Ansem now as a result. He doesn't want Sora to look at him and see the face of the person who stripped their childhood innocence away from them, because on some level Riku is that person, or at least he feels like he is. Sora, Kairi, and Riku have been torn apart, cast away from each other across the stars, and from a certain rather harsh lens, Riku is to blame for that. It was his excitement upon meeting Kairi that led to the trio trying to set out on their raft, and then to them being sent to other worlds. And then his jealousy over Sora making new friends that led to them being almost unable to save Kairi from the fate that befell her once they were out there. Even when he finally does come face to face with Sora in his new form, he has no intention of telling Sora who he really is. Forced to make himself known after saving Kairi from the organization, Riku plans on leaving without correcting Sora on his identity, and he makes to leave while being referred to as Xehanort's Heartless until Kairi forces him to stay and says his name loud enough for everyone to hear. Now this change of form is immensely important to explaining Riku's love for Sora, but to understand why, we need to take a bit of a detour. While not explicitly canon, there is a lot of evidence that Riku was permanently injured during the year that Sora was asleep, explicitly because he was fighting to make sure that Sora could be restored, and ideally, he could see his best friend again. Most of this section is going to be me expanding on an old post on r/gaming details, made by a user by the name of Doc Professor. I've linked the post in the description, but I'd like to give credit as well as major thanks to them up front. To talk about this, we'll be bouncing around the Kingdom Hearts timeline quite a bit, starting at the end of 358 over 2 days. Roxas has returned to the world that never was to try and destroy Kingdom Hearts, and Riku is there to stop him and take him back to Diz, so they can use his memories to restore Sora. Towards the end of the fight, Roxas swings his Keyblade into Riku, who seems to tank the blow with his left arm, but crumples to the ground in pain. In desperation, Riku decides to give in to the darkness in his heart and put an end to this fight, sacrificing everything to save Sora. Later on, at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, when Riku is himself again, he takes off the Organization 13 cloak he's been wearing since the end of Chain of Memories, and we see him wearing a bracer on his left wrist, the same one that Roxas initially hit him on. Doc Professor claims that this is a bracer meant to relieve pressure, and it does seem to look at least similar to real-life equivalents of the same thing. On top of this, when Riku is running around with you in your party after this point, when not actively fighting, he keeps his left arm down at his side while he runs, almost like he's trying to avoid causing himself any additional pain by moving it into uncomfortable angles. His posing in combat has changed as well. Compare Riku's stance in games where he's in a younger form versus games where he's older. While he's younger, he holds his Keyblade up over his head with his left arm out and twisted so that his palm is facing upward. After his fight with Roxas, however, he keeps his Keyblade roughly level with his head, and his left arm is much lower down and is no longer twisted, his palm facing the ground instead of the sky. And this likely isn't just a change in Riku's preference, as we see him using his younger pose consistently throughout Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. He would still stand like this in battle if he could, but it causes him too much physical pain to do so anymore. Admittedly, one potential point against this is that during the fight against Riku in Days, he also stands with his arm and Keyblade lower, despite the injury not having happened yet. But I think this can be explained away by considering two details. Firstly, this game was made after Kingdom Hearts 2, releasing almost 4 years later. Second, this fight is the only time in the game we see Riku in combat. With both details, it's very likely that the developers at Square just wouldn't see the need to make an entirely new pose for Riku for just one fight. So, what's the point of all this? Riku broke his wrist prior to Kingdom Hearts 2, so what? Well, injuries of this level are extremely rare in Kingdom Hearts. The only other person who suffers a permanent injury like this that I can think of is Xigbar, having lost his eye before he became a nobody. Riku breaking his wrist in order to make sure Sora can wake up is significant, and speaks again to the strength of his bond with Sora. Riku is so determined to set things right, so determined to save his best friend, his love, that he'll do whatever it takes to make that dream a reality, even if it means permanent damage to himself, even if it means giving into the darkness that once tore him and his loved ones apart, even if it means never being able to face Sora ever again, because all he thinks Sora would see is the person who forever broke their happy childhood. Of course, Sora doesn't see Riku as that person, and the two of them and Kairi are able to go home and continue their training until the start of Dream Drop Distance, where Riku and Sora are taking their Mark of Mastery exam to show that they've become Keyblade Masters through their travels. This test involves the two heroes going to worlds that never fully return from the darkness, and are now in a sort of deep sleep. Something goes wrong in the exam, however, and Sora and Riku are separated, traveling in parallel versions of the same worlds. Also, there's this scene.
I'm Shiki. How about you?
Riku.
Thanks, Riku.
Sure.
Hey, that's it? You chat up a girl and then just say, sure, and walk off?
I'm bad at this. Sorry. Look, it's not safe here. You should go home.
If it's dangerous, how can you just leave me here? Aren't you my knight in shining armor? Well?
Knight? You've got the wrong idea.
Oh my gosh, I was so just kidding.
It doesn't really prove anything about Riku loving Sora, but it plays really well into the Riku is gay narrative, and honestly, it's really funny. Regardless, while Sora is able to focus on completing his mission of finding the keyholes and awakening the dreaming worlds, Riku is trying to figure out why he and Sora have been dropped into these parallel worlds. Don't get me wrong, Riku is unlocking the sleeping worlds as he goes, but he's also very focused on finding his way to Sora, and understanding just what is happening in these worlds to keep the two apart. Finally, at the end of the game, the truth behind the parallel worlds is revealed. The test was hijacked by Xehanort as a part of his plan to use Sora as his newest and final vessel. Sora was put into a deep sleep by the organization, and Riku, somehow sensing the danger he was in, dove into Sora's dreams and became his Dream Eater, his protector, without even realizing. Again and again, Riku puts the safety of Sora above everything, because he cares about Sora above everything. Ultimately, with the help of his friends, Riku is able to stop Xehanort from turning Sora into his vessel, and Riku dives back into Sora's dreams one final time to awaken Sora from what should have been an eternal slumber. Riku has shown his devotion for Sora another time, and the stage is set for Kingdom Hearts 3. Unfortunately, Sora and Riku spend most of Kingdom Hearts 3 separated from each other once again, both being given different missions to prepare for the coming war with Xehanort and his vessels. Once the war is over and Xehanort has been defeated, there's still one problem. Kairi is lost, with seemingly no way to save her. The only option is for Sora to use the power of waking to save Kairi, even though by doing so, he might disappear forever himself. Mickey tries to convince him it's too dangerous, but it's actually Riku who stops the discussion, saying that Sora's heart and mind are both made up. After all their struggles together, every time Riku has put Sora's safety over everything else, in this final moment, he lets go of his own feelings, and chooses to accept what his closest friend, his love, wants most of all. And even though it's not him that Sora chose, in the end, the love that Riku feels for Sora across this entire story cannot be overstated. Of course, that's not where Kingdom Hearts actually ends, so I guess we have to talk about the rhythm game now. Melody of Memory is the most recent Kingdom Hearts game at the point of writing this essay, and it's largely a retelling of the plot of Kingdom Hearts up to this point, through the lens of Kairi diving back through her own memories to find a clue as to what happened to Sora. At the very end of the game, Riku and Kairi actually do uncover a potential lead as to where Sora might be, after roughly a year of searching. This lead culminates in them opening a gateway to another world. But unlike the other worlds we've seen throughout the franchise so far, which are more akin to different planets in a solar system, this world is better described as being in a different galaxy, or maybe even universe. Riku wastes absolutely no time, and jumps at the chance to save Sora, barely taking a moment to say that Kairi isn't strong enough to go with him yet, before going off on an adventure to save Sora once again. Now, there are two ways this scene can be analyzed, depending on the lens you use to do so. From a doylist, or real-world lens, this could just be seen as a symptom of Tetsuya Nomura not being the best at writing women with agency. But from a Watsonian, or in-fiction lens, this reads to me more as Riku's impatience to rescue Sora once again shining through. By the way, I would love to give proper credit to the inventor of these terms, but I truly cannot figure out their origins. I learned the term from Nikhil Clayton on TikTok, but the terms have been bouncing around the internet since at least 2011 according to my research, and seem to have been coined by someone in the Sherlock Holmes community on Tumblr. All this is to say, a more charitable interpretation of why Riku is going off to find Sora in Kingdom Hearts 4 without Kairi is that his love for him and desperation to see him again is pushing him to act rashly. We've seen Riku be extremely emotionally driven before, causing him to trust the wrong people in Kingdom Hearts 1, or to do something drastic with potentially permanent consequences in 358. and now to rush off after his love one more time, not even willing to wait for his other best friend to finish her training so she can back him up on this adventure and see Sora again too. And for now, that's it. That's the last Kingdom Hearts game that's been released as of the writing of this essay, so I don't have any more cutscenes to read way too deeply into for more Sora Riku content. From what we have now, though, it's obvious that Riku has a deep love for Sora. Sora is Riku's top priority for most, if not all, of the series, and nearly everything he does in this story relates back to that affection he feels for Sora, even to the detriment of himself or those around him. I hope you enjoyed listening to my conspiracy board ramblings, and if you didn't agree with my read of the characters at the start, maybe you do now. And if you don't, well, that's fine. Like I said at the top of the video, this isn't me arguing that any of this is canon, just my interpretation of Riku's character across the series. I'm incredibly passionate about Kingdom Hearts, and I love talking about my reading of the series whenever I get the chance. If you liked hearing about my reading of this game, maybe you'll like hearing about my reading of another, say this one right here. While you're at it, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It would help me out a lot. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.